In this video, I want to talk about legato playing. I recently stumbled upon a video with Hinds. It's from Guitar Player Magazine's YouTube channel. I think it's from the official Guitar Player Magazine YouTube channel. There, he's showing a bunch of licks or patterns that you can use to practice your legato technique. So I'm just gonna steal those, but I'm also gonna show how you can kind of work with those ideas and how I would practice them. Because I think it's important to practice legato even if you're not like Alan Hinds or Tom Quayle or somebody like that, whose whole kind of playing style is based on legato technique. But I think it's still important. It's an important thing to work on. Yeah, let's get right into it. The first pattern he shows there is like this. So I'm playing 3 notes on the B string and then 1 note on the top string. Then I'm going up the scale. In this case, we're playing A Dorian. You should watch that video actually before even you watch this video. So I'll put a link to it. He is talking about his ideas on legato. He says a lot of good things there. So I'm just going up the scale. And you go down. So I'm just playing one attack. I'm just picking that note. And then the next string. When I'm switching strings, I'm obviously picking there. So there's 2 picks per 4 notes. So one thing he says in that video is that you should not think of these as licks per se, because it obviously sounds very contrived if you play it like that. You should practice it like that, up and down the fretboard in all keys and everything. So this is also a very good opportunity to work on your fretboard knowledge. But then you have to be able to kind of play them musically, and the trick with all this stuff is to be able to kind of go in and out of these licks. So you can practice with a drum loop. It's a drum loop. Maybe I have an A minor. If I just play like that, it sounds patterny. So try to play into it. Try to be creative and try to go in and out of those patterns once you've practiced them over the whole neck. Could you hear what that drum loop was, by the way? Bonus points if you know what this is. It's a loop of Stratus groove from the Billy Cobham album Stratus. Or it's Spectrum is the name of the album, I think. Right? I would suggest that you also play this, of course, on different set of strings. Middle set of strings. And what's interesting about this kind of approach to guitar playing is that when you play on these 2 strings, the 2nd and 3rd string, we tend to do this, the same fingering. That we get a different combination of notes if we do that, right? Because of the tuning. So how should I put it? Instead of staying true to the melodic pattern, I'm actually letting the guitar tuning decide or dictate what I'm playing. So if I do that, we get this. Can create this kind of sounds almost like Michael Brecker with this like alternate fingering for the same note. If I start on the bottom 2 strings and then keep going, try to be creative with this stuff. Try different scales. You could do all this, or you should do all this with melodic minor as well. So this last example, played as melodic minor, would be right. So if let's say I have a C major 7 sharp 5 chord. You could also experiment with stretching. So you get into kind of more Alan Holdsworth, Scott Henderson type territory. I tend to not do that very often, but it's really, it can be very cool if you do it in the kind of in the right moment. He also shows how to do this with string skipping. So starting on the 3rd string, if I do the same finger pattern and I skip a string, I get this. There in the video, he's actually inconsistent because I think he plays all of a sudden, which is not the same finger pattern, right? But coming up next is a 7-note pattern. Those are 7 notes. And go up the A minor scale. This is all A Dorian. For some reason he starts on this note in the example. Doesn't matter. Reminds me a little bit of something that Jonathan Kreisberg would play like. This could also, of course, be melodic minor. Interesting, you get the same shape. So try to be creative with this stuff. You could use it in diminished. Or try different scales, try different grooves, try different groupings. So this could be either played as septuplets, or you could play it as like a 7-note grouping, right? So across the bar line. Let's see if I can play it as septuplets. Yeah. So I'll show you one more lick, or he doesn't think of them again as licks, but pattern. And then I'll show you how you can practice these or work with these ideas. This last one might seem kind of obvious, but it's just playing a scale. So I'm playing 2 notes per string. You don't have to play all 6 strings. You could maybe stop here. I think it sounds better if it's a pickup, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. So if you're not super strong with the whole fretboard, this is a great way to practice, because the risk with practicing scales in boxes is that we learn a box, right? And it's difficult to get outside of that box. But this forces you to think in a different way about the fretboard. This reminds me of stuff that Mick Goodrick talks about in his book, The Advancing Guitarist. So you could practice the whole scale if I'm having an A minor chord. So again, it's A Dorian. So when you do a pull off, in my opinion, it should be like a snapping effect. So I'm pulling the string down. Can you hear that snapping sound? But you don't want to be bending the string. So it's not so much about strength, it's more about doing it properly. That's a proper pull-off in classical guitar world. It has a fancy Italian name, but I call it pull-off. So that's how they practice in classical guitar. We're gonna look at some exercises later on. So if I do it properly, that's a pull-off in my book. But from what I understand, I could be completely wrong about this, but apparently, let me know if this is incorrect, Alan Holdsworth, probably the most legendary legato guitar player out there, doesn't do this. He doesn't do that snapping thing. He just lifts the finger. I heard that somewhere. I don't know if it's true. In my experience, you should do legato like that, and it's just, as a teacher, it's surprising to me how few of my students that have ever thought about this, because when you play classical guitar, this comes up pretty early on, that you have to be able to do this. I'll show you a clip with one of the best classical guitar players in the world. His name escapes me right now. It's a Turkish, but I think he lives in America, and I'll show you this because it's the best example I've seen of this perfect technique. And you can hear he's playing Paganini here, and you can hear that snapping sound even though he's playing super fast chromatic scales. If you ask me, that is ridiculous technique. So just to reiterate, you practice these in all the scales and all the keys and the entire fretboard, right? So that's a lot of work, but hey, since when doesn't it take a lot of work to get good at playing guitar? So those were the ideas, nothing fancy. You know, you can go crazy with this stuff, kind of Alan Holdsworthy. Up here you can do all these stretches, right, and do kind of Scott Henderson, that kind of stuff. But I'm gonna keep it simple with these ideas here, and now I'll show you how you can work with it, because you can kill several birds with one stone here. So if I go back to the first one, We're gonna do that. Once you first, again, you should practice it just up and down the whole neck and all the string combinations and all that stuff. Then I do this. I go to iReal Pro, and then I create in iReal Pro, I create like a practice backing track for myself that looks like this. It's just an A minor 7 loop. Then I do this. I go down to the practice setting and set it to practice transposition, up by 5 half steps every repeat. Then I do this. Now it's gonna be D minor, G minor coming up, Dorian, right? C Dorian. F Dorian. B flat. E flat. I could have gone there or there. And that will take you through all the 12 keys, right? So depending on your level, you might want to set that to more repeats. You could do 4 bars. You can, maybe just play the same and then just go up. If that's easier, whatever works for you. Don't try to, don't overreach. As I've said in a lot of my videos, for those of you who follow my channel, you're going to be sick of hearing me say this, but the way to do this is something I learned from Scott Henderson. I should also mention that I did study with Alan Hinds. When I went to GIT, I had him as one of my instructors. He's not going to remember me, but so yeah, I also studied with Scott Henderson, and he was very adamant about this, that you should be able to do stuff like this. And when you screw up, let's say you get to the B flat minor and you're like, oh no, I don't know what the next set of notes I'm gonna play if I, when I keep the same direction, you stop and you figure it out. And then you start over. And then next time around, you'll do it right. That's how you learn. So that's a very, very efficient way of practicing. So there's 2 ways of doing it. I could either decide I'm always gonna move up with the next chord, or I could stay and just change the notes according to the next chord. I prefer to kind of always move up or down because that's how the listener hears it. They hear something la do do di da do da di da do da di da do da di. Then you want da do da di da do da di. This is the whole idea, right? Like you play something that is a motif, something that the audience can grab onto, and then you want to be able to just go with that idea in any direction or anywhere you want, regardless of what the chord is that is coming up, right? Like that's a famous quote by, I think, by Wayne Shorter. That I don't want the chord to decide what I'm playing. I'm gonna decide what I'm playing, not the chord changes. I think he said something like along those lines. Maybe he didn't. I don't know. So you could do this with all these exercises. So maybe if I do the like that. So A Dorian. D Dorian. see there, I was a little bit unsure of the B flat. There it is. So I make sure that I got it, and then I start over. I mean, if it's way too much to swallow, just do maybe try the first week to switch between A and D minor, and the next week D minor to G minor, or something like that. So again, you don't want to frustrate yourself if it's too much. It all depends on what level you are, how well you know your fretboard. But this exercise is definitely going to help you get stronger with the fretboard and get away from the scale boxes. But at the same time, you want to pay close attention to that you're doing the legato correct with the snapping effect without bending out of tune. I should also mention this. I personally am not like one of those players like Alan Hinds or Tom Quayle is his name, right? Like they are very legato based. I use it a little bit as more as an effect. If I played like this example, I wouldn't play it like, I would probably pick some of the notes. So honestly, I'm not sure what I'm doing. It's a combination of, maybe I'm picking two notes. Right? I'm not strict legato, but when I'm practicing legato, it's strict legato. And I also find it strange that some people claim that they don't play legato at all. I saw recently a video or an interview with, what's his name, Joe Bonamassa, where he claims that he doesn't use legato at all.
It's still the same amp.
Talk about your picking, about your right hand. You can do these super fast alternate picking on these things, and you practice this stuff a lot.
Yeah, and my style, if you can call it that, comes from having no legato whatsoever. I pick everything. I'm like love Al Di Meola, like one of my favorite guitar players all time.
Yep.
And when you're hearing him,
that seems a little bit odd to me, but I think what he means that he doesn't use it when he's to play fast, because that's what Alan Hinds claims, that he couldn't play fast picking, so he developed this legato technique instead. I think it's the same thing with John Scofield. I think I've heard him say that he wasn't able to pick fast. He was coming up in the times where John McLaughlin and Al Di Meola and that stuff was very popular, but he could never develop that picking technique, which is understandable because who can? So they kind of compensate with the legato. But jazz players usually comes from the history of playing with arch tops and like heavy gauge strings and stuff like that. So the players that we're talking about here, Alan Hinds, Alan Holsworth, Tom Quayle, it's not really a jazz player perhaps, but maybe Alan Holsworth is not even really a jazz player either, to be honest. But I guess Kurt Rosenwinkel would be another example of legato, lots of legato in his play. They tend to play more solid body guitars. When I imagine, I don't think it's a stretch of the imagination to imagine that they have low action and like lighter gauge strings. Another thing to consider is that when we're doing this, for example, we're using slide as another effect to actually to create speed, basically. So instead of picking, I'm sliding. That's how, John Scofield has this mix of legato and slides. That's how he's able to play all this fast stuff. It's not picking like John McLaughlin or Al Di Meola or Joe Bonamassa, apparently. I just want to make it clear that all these names that I'm dropping are amazing guitar players that I admire a lot. Something else that I've mentioned a lot is that if we want to look at just strict guitar technique, the best places to look is in the classical guitar canon, but a lot of those exercises are based on this hand, so it's a little bit redundant if you're a picking guitar player. But for this hand, you can find a lot of good stuff in the classical, not the repertoire, but the books that are out there, and also heavy metal guitar player videos. Not that many books, I don't think, but there's a lot of like instructional videos from the 80s and stuff like that when shredding was in style. Apparently shredding is a little bit coming back, but so this is one of the best books I've seen for guitar in general. Is Pumping Nylon. His hilarious cover, which might make you think that it's like not a serious book, but it's very good, and it's by Scott Tennant, who is one of the best classical guitar players in the world, in my opinion, and I think he's also a member of the Los Angeles Guitar Quartet, who, by the way, have recorded music by Pat Metheny. If you haven't checked that out, I really recommend that. But now I'm really digressing here. But in this book, you can find exercises for legato playing, such as just doing this. Or you could just do this, like second to first finger. And then the middle two fingers. Relaxed, right? Should be relaxed. And then the Django Reinhardt would never do this exercise. But we can. Of course, you can come up with all the combinations of fingers. That's another one. So you do that with the metronome. Don't have to do fast. It's better to do it properly. So here's another idea or a thought that I have. If you practice this way, and make sure that it's even and in terms of volume and in length, so you're not. But you do that for 20 minutes a day, but you do it properly. With you make sure that you're. Maybe at first you have to do it super slow. So that you develop this. Alan Hinds says strength. I don't really think it's about physical strength. I think it's more about proper technique, proper hand position, and doing it the right way. So that's 20 minutes well spent, because we sometimes think that we just have to put in the hours. So you hear students say, like, I'm going to practice 5 hours a day this summer or whatever. Well, what are you going to practice and how are you going to practice? Because anybody who is like working out or whatever, they know that if somebody goes to the gym, you can go to the gym for hours every day and nothing is going to happen if you do the exercises wrong or inefficient. But if you get a personal trainer who tells you this is how you do it to maximize effort so that you get the best results, then it's enough to do a little bit of working out. You still have to do it every day and significant effort, but it's not like you have to maybe do 10 hours a day. So it's better to practice a little bit, but consistent every day this way. And make sure that you do it right, rather than sit and watch TV and do it sloppy, fast, and incorrect for 10 hours a day. That's not going to change anything. Like, nothing is going to happen. It's just waste of time. So it's important to remember that it's not enough to practice a lot. you also have to make sure that you practice efficiently. Or if you're unsure of what am I doing, do I have bad technique, that's when you might need to go and find yourself an instructor. It could be a classical guitar teacher, even if you're an electric guitar player, because they can help you with technique. And it's there's a, you know, if you find a proper classical guitar teacher, there's like a level of quality control there, as opposed to somebody who's just you know, I've seen so many bad teachers out there. But if you're a proper classical guitar teacher, you know this stuff. Or find a guitar teacher that you admire and like and how they play, and that could work too if you're lucky enough to live in a city where those are available. So as always, I'll put these little ideas on my Patreon page, but I don't write out all the key changes going through the keys, because I could give you all that stuff, but that would be kind of stupid, to be honest, because then I do the work for you. The whole idea is that you need to do that work yourself. And if you have to write it out at first, you know, when you go through the modulations, do that. Write it out. If that helps, anything that works. So I hope you find some of that stuff useful and interesting. And as always, I want to thank you for your time and attention, and I shall see you next time.